What's going on, everyone? Welcome back along to the crib, where we continue the series here today, where we are looking at the up-and-coming Super Rugby season. Now, if you haven't caught up with the first video we put out, it was looking at the New Zealand conference and where we think they're going to end up there. Today, we're moving over the ditch. We're going over to the land of Australia to see how badly or possibly improve they could go in 2018. Of course, we couldn't have a preview of the Australian conference without inviting back the local Australian, the Scottish Cannon, finally back on the channel. Man, it's been too long. How are you going?
Good cornflake. Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know when the last time we recorded something. Was it back at the Rugby Championship? I don't even know if we did something then, but I remember it used to be regular in Super Rugby weekly, but last year. But man, my God, it's been a while.
It has indeed, yeah. That was probably the last time was Super Rugby, the weekly thing I did. So we'll be doing that again, so you're more than welcome. Hopefully we'll get you back on a few times for that one. So yeah, today we're going to be looking at the five teams in Australia. So the four Australian teams and of course the Sunwolves. They're in the Australian Conference, come on now. And we have a look at who they've got in their sides and what we think they're going to be like this year. So let's dig straight into it. No specific order. We're going alphabetical, just to keep everyone from getting too excited. So we're going to start with the Brumbies and see what they've got. The Brumbies, okay. So a lot has changed with the Brumbies this season. Now they've got 14 players out and 11 players in. And with so many of their team, like big names departing, like Safadi, Cabelli, Tufaiangas, Toa, to name, you know, just a couple of them.
Jared Butler, also a very good player.
I thought you said, all the talk, though, is of strengthening Australia. Do you think the Brumbies are weaker this season? Because I do.
Yeah, I think they're weaker this season, but I think they're going to be weaker because the other teams are going to come up. Obviously, the Brumbies the last couple of years have been the best Australian team, purely based on their defense. I think, the Australian teams of recent years have been very lacking when it comes to defense, and the Brumbies at least have somewhat of a good defense that keeps them involved in a lot of games. I mean, I remember last year they lost something like 7 or 8 matches by less than 7 points. It's some crazy stat like that. They lost a lot of matches against good sides by 7 points or less, and that's all down to their defense being able to slow the ball down, slow the game down, and really starve the opponents, especially the Kiwis, of ball. But it's going to be much more difficult this season. They're losing a lot of players to Europe, especially some to Japan. And also the new coach coming in with Dan McKellar coming in to replace Stephen Larkham, who has taken a full-time job with the Australian Wallabies. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, they've got Chance Penny coming in. They've got Nasarani. They've got Polcock, to name a few. I'm sure we'll go into more depth in a second. But my God, they've lost a few big-name players. It's going to be very interesting to see how they play it.
I like how you did that. You segued perfectly into my next point. Was about the coach as well, with Larkham going to the Wallabies. Dan McKellar, so assistant coach last season. What can Brumbies fans and even Australian fans expect from their new coach?
Well, he was a big part of the rugby championship, the National Rugby Championship for a while with the Vikings or the Canberra Vikings, and they made the final last year. Did they make the? I think they lost in the final to someone after hosting it. The NRC is a bit of a while ago, but Dan McKellar does bring a lot of new and interesting ideas to the table. You know, it's very interesting because, Stephen Larkham is that bigger name that everyone knows, obviously an Australian Wallaby legend, but at the same time, he was a really good coach, especially when it came to attack and really trying to take Howard and Joe Powell under his wing and really make them better players. But Dan McKellar, he's been solid for the Canberra Vikings as of late. They've always been competitive over the last 2 or 3 NRCs. But it's going to be very interesting to see how they go because, a new coach often breathes new life into a side, but at the same time can be completely detrimental. Look at what happened to the Waratahs after Michael Cheika left. Darryl Gibson's done nothing for the Waratahs, and, they've completely gone to shit of recent, but when it comes to... Well, we're just going to wait and see is basically what I'm saying, because Stephen Larkham, big name, leaving, but Dan McKellar, will he be able to fill the big shoes that Stephen Larkham's left? We're just going to wait and see.
Yep, exactly right. You mentioned also, when you're talking about the first point there, David Pocock. back with the Brumbies. Now, yes, he is injured. He will be out for a couple of months or 2-3 months, so the talk is. But with the new coach, the change at the top, and new players coming back in, Pocock's strongest point, and with the teams he often plays with, is the way that they exploit the rolling maul. Do you think they're going to stick with this, with the Pocock style, make sure that they get that sort of thing exactly right and make it a weapon again for the Brumbies?
It always is a weapon for the Brumbies, isn't it? I mean, even when David Pocock wasn't playing last year, one of the biggest scoring opportunities for the Brumbies last year was the rolling maul. So that's always going to be a big part of their game, and it's such a big impact on the game of rugby now, the rolling maul. You see the sides in Europe do it so well. You see Georgia do the rolling maul so well. South Africa traditionally had a very good rolling maul, and it's honestly Brumbies' probably biggest attack. So you're not going to see them really lose that from the spine of their side. But with Pocock, who is out for the opening, I think I've heard anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks, it's not going to be David Pocock in the initial rounds directing the rolling maul. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Dan McKellar and the forwards coach and the attack coach really do in terms of how they're going to use that rolling maul as a weapon, and if teams in this year's Super Rugby are going to be up to it.
Indeed. So the Brumbies, of course, top finishers in 2017. Ironically as it is, they with equal wins as the now destroyed Western Force. I'm sure I'll mention them more later on as we talk about it as well. But do you think they're again going to be the team from Australia that is going to be the most difficult to beat or the most difficult to go and visit? Do you think they're going to challenge us again for that top spot in Australia?
Well, it's always difficult going mid-season to Canberra because it's always below freezing there. So, especially for the South African sides, I think we come and tour down in Canberra or Brumbies land mid-season. They're going to obviously have difficult trouble, but the Brumbies traditionally are always going to be one of the strongest sides in Australia. They have been Australia's best Super Rugby team for a long time. I'm not sure if I see it this year. Without David Pocock at the helm for the opening round, I feel like it's going to be much more difficult for the Brumbies to really do well. But at the same time, the Brumbies do have a number of good players coming in. They've got Lachlan McCaffrey coming in back from the Leicester Tigers. They've got Richie Arnold coming in from the Force. They got Falau Faenga coming in from the New South Wales Country Eagles, and a few other, Matt Lucas from the Waratahs and Nasarani from the Force. So they've got a few good players coming in from the disbanded Western Force, but at the same time, they've lost, pretty much the spine of their side.
So, yeah, you talk about that with a lot of players coming in from the NRC and club teams as well. It's something that's quite a common theme. The more I look at these teams with the New Zealand sides and now in Australia, that there's a lot of new talent coming up because there's a lot of stuff going overseas as expected. But it seems to be a lot more in this in recent years that there's more and more of this coming up from the bottoms. But finally on the Brumbies, last couple of points. We'll do this for all the teams as well, so this will get you prepared for the others. Strengths and weaknesses of the Brumbies. Now, for mine, I think their back row has to be the strength of the Brumbies. Like the rolling maul, just those flankers especially do a lot of the damage that they need to be done. It's their point of attack, as you would. The weaknesses on them, I think that they're just overall light on recognisable talent. Players that they can depend on to get the job done is going to be where they could be found out. We'll see. It only takes a couple of weeks for a star to be born, but at this stage, they look a bit light there. What are your strengths and weaknesses for the Brumbies?
Well, the back row for the Brumbies has always been traditionally strong, and that's always been thanks to David Pocock for the Brumbies over the last few years. But Lachlan McCaffrey and Tom Cusack are huge in the back row for them, and Nasarani is going to be that big running number 8 that I feel like has been missing for the Brumbies for a while. So that's going to definitely be their strength. Another strength I do want to say is I hope Christian Lealiafano really comes back to his own this year. Obviously coming back from leukemia, I think, or is it some form of cancer, which is
about right. Yep.
So he played a few games at the end of last year, and I just really hope he finds his form again. Of the 2013 Lions tour, because I think that's when he played his best. Hopefully he gets back to his best, and also it also depends on how big the two Fijian backliners of Tavita Karanjani and Henry Spate go. So we just gotta wait and see. I feel like they've got a lot of power all across the backlines, but it's not like any of those standout X Factor players that you're talking about. It's not an Israel Folau. It's not a it is the David Pocock, but he's out for the start of the season. It's this. I completely agree with you. There's no like completely X Factor players that can completely blow a game completely wide open.
So finally on the Brumbies, where do you think they're going to finish, and any other points you'd like to make on this side?
I feel like the Brumbies will finish second in the Australian Conference. They'll probably end up number one at the end of the day, as they normally are. But I'm going to put them second because I feel like my personal team is in for a revival. But I think we'll touch on them in a second. I hope anyway.
Big talk, big talk. Okay, that's going to be interesting. Let's move straight on. Let's go to the Rebels, because the Waratahs are last, so you're going to have to wait till the end before we can talk about them. That's what you get for having a team with W. But we're going to move on to the Western Force. I mean, the Rebels. Now, okay, let's be completely honest about this, and let's not piss around all the bullshit that's gone around before this. It was all about money. They are you are gutless idiots. All this sort of rubbish. The Rebels are pretty much a rebranded force. Their team... 90% of it is a Force team. Their coach, 24 players out, about 19 in from my count. I think the Rebels are the only team that have actually gained quality from this improving Australia rubbish that we've all heard about. They've pulled in a whole heap of the Force players. We've also got Horwitz from your Waratahs, Guinea, Jeff Parling. Is this the best recruiting Australian team in this division? Or the best team in the Australian division?
This should be the Rebels' best season ever. If it's not, I don't know what's happening. You've got... Look, listen to these names. Ainsley from the Force. Ben Daly from the Force. Faulkner from the Force. Talakai from the Reds. Ranji from the Force. Coleman from the Force. Got Jeff Parling, who was a former British and Irish Lion, which is going to be huge from the Exeter Chiefs. Matt Phillip from the Force. You've got Ross Haylor-Petty from the Force. Richard Hardwick from the Force. Michael Ruru from the Force. Tyler Adams from New South Wales County Eagles. And he was huge last year for the in the Shute Shield, the Sydney competition. He was voted the best player in the Sydney Shute Shield competition last year. So he's huge again for the Rebels. You got Horwitz also. Billy Meeks from the Force. Henry Hutchinson from the Aussie Sevens. And of course, Dane Haylor-Petty and the coach, Dave Wessels. I mean, come on. We saw what the Force were doing last year. They were playing absolutely amazing rugby. Can they do it again? Can they bring the spine of the Force to the Rebels and make the Melbourne Rebels the most competitive they have? I really hope they can. You know, they've also got the talents of Marika Kolobetti, Naivalu. They've got Jack Maddox at the back. They've got so much talent in this team that it's almost criminal if they don't do well this season.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point I was making. Exactly. Couldn't agree with you more. On the whole Force rubbish, just quickly, because we'll hopefully make another video about this if you're keen about whole Super Rugby 2017 to 2018. But what's your take on the whole thing? You think it's all just dollars and gutless rubbish from the ARU?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I obviously came out and said last year we had about an hour debate on this issue. Last year, I was in support of cutting the team, and that's coming from my arrogant New South Wales perspective. You know, I feel like the Aussie team should be much more competitive this year. I mean, I've heard that there's been, $30 million or something shipped to the Melbourne Rebels from the ARU, where the Western Force got like $5 million or something, or not even any money. You know, it really sucks. You know, it really sucks that the entire situation happened the way it did. You know, I obviously feel for the Western Force and the Western Australia, because the Force for everyone was their second team. You know, everyone loves seeing them play, and while they never made the finals, they're always there and thereabouts. They're always beating New Zealand teams at home and causing the big upsets. I mean, the Force were great. The Force were a great part of Australian rugby. They're not going to be lost, hopefully, with the Indo-Rugby Pacific competition coming in next year. Hopefully, Triggy Forrest really nails that and really starts to develop rugby, not in just Asia and, you know, places like Hong Kong, India, wherever they want to go. But hopefully keeps rugby sane and rugby still there in the West. I mean, the West have a Buzzard Cup game in 2019. So, you know, I hope that it doesn't become completely disbanded rugby in Western Australia, because league isn't there. So that's a place that rugby can thrive. But, you know, I really do feel that it is going to be best for the entirety of Australian rugby, because I can tell you lots of people are switching off because Australian teams aren't as competitive anymore. It sucks that rugby is now the fourth biggest sport here in Australia. That's even pushing it. You know, you've got rugby league, your AFL, and you've got soccer, which are all pushing rugby union. So, unfortunately, with the state of Super Rugby and the current competition, where we're playing the best rugby nations in the world on a consistent basis, we've got to make those decisions. And unfortunately, the Western Force were just the unfortunate bearers of the bad news.
Do you still back the decision now?
I still back the decision. Yes. I still feel like, you know, I mean, you should see this team on paper, the Rebels on paper, should be a good team. If that can start growing rugby in Victoria and start, I guess, making more people go away from the AFL mad town, you know, hopefully rugby can potentially maybe crack into Melbourne. The Storm have done it. The Melbourne Storm have done it in the NRL. If the Rebels can make a little bit of inroads in Victoria, that's where a big portion of the population of Australia is. So, you know, unfortunately, the numbers just were never in the Force's favour. You know, I still support the decision because I want to see a competitive Wallabies, I want to see a competitive Waratahs, competitive Revs, a competitive Brumbies, and a competitive Rebels. And if cutting the team is what we have to do to be consistent and actually beat New Zealand and South Africa on a consistent basis, I'm all for it.
Do you not think it's a bit... I'm going on a bit too much about the Rebels here, but do you not think it's a bit ironic how the whole spreading around Australian talent around the country has pretty much just deposited everyone into one team, though? Isn't that a bit against the whole purpose of getting rid of the Force, though?
Well, I put that down to a lot to Dave Wessels. You saw what Dave Wessels did out west. I mean,
oh, no question, it's because of the coach. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, people want to follow him. He was approached by, I think, Leinster in Ireland or a few counties in Ireland. He could have made 3 times more money in Ireland, but he decided to stay in Australia because he feels like there's something special here.
I just think it's a bit kind of not what the ARU wanted from it, though. It's not what the plan was.
What, did you expect an even sharing of the pie to go to the Rebels, to go to the Waratahs, to go to the Brumbies? Is that what you expected?
I think that's what the ARU expected, yeah.
Well, I think that's unfeasible if Dave Wessels stays in Melbourne. If Tony McGann was still the coach there, I mean, there would be an even spread. But with Dave Wessels going straight to the Force when Tony McGann was on the outer after a disastrous last year, I mean, what else do you want to do? It's like if you, it's like you follow a leader across the country. If you respect someone so much, you're going to go there because the people around the organization were so strong to you. And you saw the passion out west. You saw it firsthand. Yeah. You saw how passionate people were about rugby, how passionate people were about the Western Force players and making sure that the families were taken after. I feel like that's the best decision, and I don't feel like it. I mean, the Waratahs are still good on paper. The Brumbies are still good on paper. They should be fine. The Rebels were the team that needed it the most, and I'm glad they got most of the pie.
That's a fair point. Yeah, they did need it the most out of all of them. So we've talked about it a lot already, but new coach, are you expecting the same out of him with the Rebels as we've seen from the Force, seeing as it's pretty much the core of the team's the same?
Well, you hope so. You just hope that Dave Wessels can take some of these other big players like Marika Koroibete, Will Genia, David Horwitz, all these types of players, Tyler Evans, make them from good players into superstars. That's his role. That's what he needs to do. And I don't expect anything less from him because Dave Wessels has done that for a lot of the players in the Western Force. I mean, Adam Coleman, he was a nobody until last year, and then he comes and he's the starter in the Wallabies. He is a really good player, and I give a lot of that credit to Dave Wessels.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's go on to our final point here with the Rebels. We've talked about them long enough. The strengths and weaknesses, for mine, we've talked about a lot already, so it's pretty obvious what it's going to be. It's going to be the coach. He's the sort of guy that can get the best out of an average player. Like you've already just said that. We've talked about enough already, so I'm going to not say any more. Weaknesses for them, only thing I can really see is as long as they can get, especially their pack, all going off the same song sheet. If they can sort that out, it's not going to be a weakness. But if anything, they've got a lot of work to do that to make sure their backs get the service that they need. Your strengths and weaknesses for the Rebels?
Strengths are obviously the back line. Will Genia at 10. Sorry, Wilgini at 9 with Michael Ruru coming on as a replacement later in the game. Huge, both amazing players. You've got Tyler Adams, Jack Debrasini, and Jack McGregor in the house. If Tyler Adams, I don't think you see much of him in Cornflake, but he is an amazing player. If he can get the ball in good positions, an early ball, he is going to be probably close to the Rebels MVP this year. That's a huge for them. Obviously, they don't have the biggest back row. They don't have the biggest names in the back row, but that's what Dave Wessels needs to do. That's what they need to do is cover up their weaknesses.
You know what's kind of ironic about that comment? It's that Taylor Adams played for the Southern Stags in the Mitre 10 Cup, which is south and where I am, for about 2 seasons, so I am pretty familiar with him.
Oh, there you go.
I recognise the name, but I didn't know it was the same guy. But yeah, he is. He's very small, but he is quite elusive, that young guy. So yeah, I do actually know him. Yes, good little backup. Final finish for the Rebels, and anything else you want to add for them?
I want to put them in third this year just because I want to see them in third. I would love them to top the conference. I would love the Rebels to just completely just, give... if the Rebels come top of the conference, the ARU made the right decision. If they end up getting 1 or 2 wins again this year, I'll be very disappointed because of the talent they've got there. I would love to see them in third this year. Third year this year in the Aussie Conference.
So I'm going to go completely against everything and put them in first. I think they're going to top the table just because they kind of become the force. They kind of become that, like you said, everyone's second favourite team that they want to see do well. It's kind of the underdog sort of status of the Super Rugby side. So, hey, go for it. They've got a bloody good team. You can't argue that. So hopefully they have a bit of success there in the Australian Conference. Right, let's move on to the third team, the Queensland Reds. Third team? Third new coach, Brad Thorne. Now, I mean, a rugby legend. You can't deny his exploits around league and rugby, overseas. Everywhere he's gone, he wins trophies. He succeeds. Everything he does. He's only spent a little bit of time coaching in Australia around club level and stuff. We know what he's like on the field. He's a hard-nosed, aggressive sort of player. But as a coach, what do we expect from Brad Thorne?
It's hard because he's had experience in both codes. He's a legend in both codes. He was obviously he took Queensland Country. I think did they win the NRC last year? Queensland Country or thereabouts. He's always been a smart coach. I haven't seen enough of him to really make a huge a huge prediction on them. I would really like to see him bring this new talent through that the Reds are trying to do and make them into superstars. I think that's his role because I tell you, there's a lot of off-field issues with the Queensland Reds this year. And I really hope that he really takes them by the horns and really makes them their own. I mean, if you have a look at the people on the way out this year, it's huge. It's huge to the Rebels. They've had the Stephen Moore who's retired. They got Robert Simmons who's also gone. Nick Frisbee's out. Jake McIntyre's out. Chris Kieran-Johnny's out, and Nick Styles obviously released. He had a disastrous season, so I'm not against that at all. But I think Brad Thorne will bring a bit more to Queensland than a few other coaches. Obviously, you've got that Kiwi influence as well, so you obviously know that the Kiwis got something up their sleeve. But I'm very interested to see how they go because they've got so many off-field issues at the moment that it's going to be very hard for them to, get there before the season actually starts. I mean, last year on paper, the Queensland Reds seemed to be one of the best teams on paper before the season started. Look what bloody happened. Absolutely awful. Absolutely awful last year. So, and not to mention, Quade Cooper is no longer needed for the Queensland Reds. So, it just shows you that Brad Thorne is making quite a few decisions.
So that's perfectly leading into my next point about Quade Cooper. What on earth happened there? Is this, in your opinion, for Australian rugby, for the Reds, for everything he does, is this a loss to Australia, or this is good riddance? Finally, we can move on and get rid of him.
It's a hard one because I saw an article today with David Campese coming out and said that Quade Cooper is one person that you don't want to lose to anyone else. They said that they should completely have Quade Cooper as an amazing talent as that make the side around Quade Cooper. Obviously, he's a player that can win a game or lose a game. His defense is very questionable a lot of the time, but at the same time, he makes an impact, doesn't he? He really makes a solid impact all the time. And, that's what you need is an X factor. He has that X factor in the team. And, you know, he's going to be a very important around that Queensland, not going to be around that lineup, as I see the Rugby Sevens just finished in the corner of my eye with Australia beating Scotland by 3 points. But anyway, you know, I feel like Quade Cooper is going to be a big loss, but at the same time, there's some big name 10s that should make it. I mean, John O'Lance from the Force should come in and make a solid impact. Ben Lucas as well. I'm very interested to see. I don't know why Quade was chucked out. You would have thought that he would have been that figurehead that a lot of the youngsters would have wanted to be around.
Yeah, definitely. So, on the same sort of off-field issues, Carmichael Hunt, apart from being a complete idiot, what's your thoughts on him? Are we going to see him this season? Are they going to tear him up and send him off down the street?
It depends on what the police investigation comes out. He'll probably get another slap in the wrist, a big fine, and probably a good behaviour bond. But I don't know. I don't know what Carmichael Hunt was thinking, because, you know, he's for a lot of people, especially Michael Checker, he was looked at as the next Wallaby 12. But obviously, I mean, you saw what he did in June. He was good in June, but he got injured, and then he's had this off-field issues. And, you know, I was never a huge fan of Carmichael Hunt, I must say. I mean, he was great back in the league days where I used to watch league all the time, but I never think he's fully hit his stride in rugby union. He's made an impact in NRC, but the NRC isn't Super Rugby. So, you know, I don't know what they're going to do. It really depends on the police investigation. What I really want to see at the end of the day is what impact this will make in the entire Queensland Reds lineup, because obviously this does affect their preseason. They got Carmichael Hunt, who's facing off-field issues, being suspended by the ARU. You've obviously got that George Smith incident with him being locked up in Japan for a few days. And you've had the Quade Cooper incident. So, I mean, what are the Queensland Reds going to do?
Yep. They've had a lot of changes as well. About 16 players out and 11 players in. But the interesting thing about it is that all of them, pretty much except for Lucas and Lance, are coming from Club Rugby NRC club sides. It seemed that in the past has struggled for leaders and people to take the great game and carry. In the past, they look like even more like a team that's going to struggle again for leadership, do you think?
Yeah, I think this is where Scott Higginbotham needs to stand up. Even he's had off-field issues, Scott Higginbotham. So this is where Scott Higginbotham really needs to stand up. And you need some of the youngsters who have had Wallaby experience and Super Rugby experience to really take it from the front. That's the same for Samuel Karevi. That's the same for Kane Douglas as well. So that's where they need to step up and really take the bull by the horns.
So strength and weaknesses from the Reds. Personally, myself, I think the strength of the team is going to be the youth that they can develop. I think if they can come through the season and get a few stars out of it, they should hold them in good stead. We all know that's what the whole cycle of rugby is all about. You've got to bring up the new guys and just keep the rotations going. Their weakness, I think, is like my last question just was. The old guys, huge pressure on them to lead this team. And if they don't, if they can't, if it all falls apart, it's going to be 2017 all over again for me. Your strengths and weaknesses for the Reds?
I completely agree with you. I mean, they've got a lot of youth coming through. They'll have a lot of new ideas, especially with Brad Thorne at the helm. But at the same time, they're missing that key experience. Is where the big names need to step up, and they're really missing some big names. I mean, John O'Lance is really going to have to step up if he's the starting 10 for the Reds, and you know. You've got Nabuli and you've got Lachlan Morant. You've got a few big names that need to stand up, but I'm not sure if they will or not.
So final finish for the Reds this year, and anything else you want to add on them?
Yeah, I'll go. They'll be the bottom team in the Aussie Conference this year.
Oh.
I think, well, outside of the Sunwolves, but I think they'll go fourth.
So you're going to put them fourth? Well, I'm going to put them fifth. They're going to finish dead last. It's going to be another horror for the Queensland Reds. So you mentioned the only non-Australian team in the Australian Conference is, of course, the Sunwolves from Japan. Promising signs out of the Sunwolves this season on paper, but surprise, surprise, another new coach. So 4 teams, 4 new coaches. What is going on over there? Jamie Joseph, the former Highlanders coach, will be stepping up to take the Sunwolves this season. So this is a coach from his time with the Highlanders, that is very much a forward-dominated kind of coach. He was a forward, obviously, in his playing days as well, the back row. it's an area I think that Japan as a country needs the most assistance and help with. He's a very hard-nosed coach. He's very straightforward. How do you think he's going to help these Sunwolves out?
Well, will he have the same impact that he did with the Highlanders a few years ago? Is the question. A lot of people, was it 2015 the Highlanders won, or was it 2016? I can't remember. Is it 2015?
15, yeah.
15.
The Hurricanes, yeah.
16
the
and then Crusaders, yeah. So you saw what they did. The Highlanders did in the 2015 season is that there were a bunch of no names, and Jamie Joseph made them superstars. Can they do that to the Sunwolves? Coming from the Japan job, which, it's also quite an interesting job. I mean, they brought in some good players. I mean, they brought back in Yamada, who's a very classy winger who loves scoring amazing acrobatic tries. I love watching him play. They brought in Michael Leach, which is a huge signing for them from the Chiefs. I love seeing Michael Leach play. He's always very physical, very strong, all-around really good player. And a shout-out to Jabba Vadzi, the Georgian, was coming in from the Worcester Warriors. They've brought him in as hooker, so I think that's a very interesting choice for them. Hopefully that makes the Sunwolf scrum much better than it should. I mean, they're technically good, Japan, but obviously they're not the biggest in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my next point, was about the player recruitment as well. You've spoken about it a bit already, but depth, Super Rugby experience. I think if they named a 23 of full-strength side, it should challenge any Australian team as well, because you've talked about a lot of these guys as well. But Craig Miller coming in, they've got Ruan Smith, they've got Henkers van Wyk in the front row, which is going to stabilise that a lot more as well. We've also picked up Grant Hatting, the South African, coming into the team as well. Leach, you've talked about. Hayden Parker from the Highlanders is a pretty much no-nonsense, do your cool roles, kick goals, pass the ball, sort of fly half, which is going to help them. You mentioned about Yamada as well.
Obviously, you had Tusi Pisi, who was there for a while. The Sunwolves didn't really fire under him, so...
completely different player, though.
Yeah,
completely different player.
That's what I'm saying. Will that structure really suit Japan? Which, I mean, Japan are one of the most structured sides in the world. Will that be a distinct difference for them? And really, I mean, they're so technically good, Japan, and so structured like that. Will that 10, which the Japanese are always seeming to miss, make a huge difference for them? Is what we need to see.
Yeah, because you look at the international teams that they've had there, former New Zealand players, which I can't remember their names off the top of my head right now, but they are very basic, straightforward. Nothing against their style of play, but they are just simple fly halves. They catch the ball, they kick goals. That's just what they do. So that is very much a Hayden Parker, which 2CPC, like talked about, he was a trickster. He liked to do all those silly things and solo individual brilliance, which nothing against that, but that style, like you say, I don't think fitted them very well. And they've also picked up Super Rugby winner already, Robbie Robinson, former Southland Stag as well. So, I mean, he's had a tough time with injury and things as well, but it's good to see him back in Super Rugby. And when you add the players we've already got, Horia, Wykes, Quirk, Brits, Tanaka, Tamura, Lafaeli, Tupou, and Fukuoka, I mean, they look really, really strong. And I think that they are going to actually challenge this Australian conference. I think they could beat any of those Australian teams on paper, looking at squads. I think they could take them out. Do you think that this is a good enough side?
I think they'll be good at home. I think they'll be good in Tokyo. One thing we need to really mention, I don't know if you're going to talk about, is they won't be traveling as much this year with the new conference. Instead of going west and down to South Africa in 17-hour flights and playing out of Singapore, they're going to play a majority of their matches in Australasia in the same time zone. So they won't be doing as much traveling. I haven't looked at the fixtures for the Sunwolves, so I don't know if they're still playing matches out of Singapore. Anyway, I'll bring up now, but I hope the Sunwolves are more competitive this year. I hope they get a few more wins. I mean, they beat the Blues at the end of last year, which was a huge upset. So hopefully they can continue to do that and really start to develop Japanese rugby before the World Cup there in 2 years' time.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Travel is always a massive thing. You could talk about travel for all these, every team in Super Rugby is going to change the game big time, but none more so than the Sunwolves and the Hug Warriors. Their seasons are going to change massively. Looking through their fixtures, as they kick things off in Tokyo against the Brumbies, but then they still go to Singapore to face the Rebels in week 3, as it's called. So,
no one shows up in Singapore. It pisses me off when they go to Singapore. No one cares in Singapore. It's like 7,000 every match. Stop going there.
Then they are back in Tokyo, though. So looks like they're still Tokyo dominant because week 8, Waratahs is in Tokyo, Blues is in Tokyo. Then they hit the road again to New Zealand. So predominantly does look like Tokyo.
They've only got 2 matches in Singapore this year.
And they are going to Hong Kong as well.
I think they had 4 last year. Are they going to Hong Kong?
They're playing the Stormers in Hong Kong. Yep.
There you go. I mean, at least they get to see the best of Asia.
I mean, victims of their own success, I guess, aren't they? Gotta go play in Hong Kong and make the money.
At least the Hong Kong people actually should show up, unlike Singapore.
That's true. That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, good crowd. They are good crowds too. Like in Tokyo, it's real passionate about their rugby as well, which is great to see.
25,000 every game. It's always good.
Exactly, and you need that to build up to the World Cup as well, because you need a great World Cup in Japan next year. It's only next year. Jeez, we're gonna have to recap the World Cup. Yeah, it's come so quickly.
Yeah, I know. It's still a year and a half away, not even, but. This is where teams need to start really building. I think Eddie Jones put it great when he said the 2018 November internationals actually start to matter now. Instead of rebuilding your sides during 2016, 2017, 2018, the November internationals, you played 4 matches in a row, which is pretty much like the pool stage of the Rugby World Cup. You have 4 weeks in a row without any breaks. Obviously, the Rugby Championship and Six Nations has breaks. You have 4 matches in a row during that November international period to start getting towards the Rugby World Cup. I'm excited, and that's why I'm rambling about rubbish, but I'm excited for the World Cup. It's actually in a decent time zone in Australia, and I'm thinking about going, so I'm very excited.
It's going to make a big, big difference. Okay, Sunwolves, strengths and weaknesses for the Sunwolves. For me, back row, again, players like Brits especially. He was simply spectacular last season. And you add to them the new players they're getting into that back row like Leach. I mean, Leach and Brits, that's just going to be ridiculously good with Quirk in there as well. The weakness, though, is if Joseph can get this team clicking fast enough. I mean, it'll be all right if it gets to the halfway through the tournament. I guess it'll be okay. They can see their progress. But if they want to really compete at a time when Australia, I think, is pretty much still at their worst, and they could take advantage of this, they need to get on the board and on the ball straight away and start getting victories. Your thoughts?
Yeah, they need to get on the board. They need to start winning. They need to start being more consistent, especially for the Japanese as well. Some weeks they get destroyed by 90 points. I think, did the Hurricanes or someone put 90 points on them? But they end up being the Blues at the end of the season. I can't remember. They're so inconsistent, the Sunwolves. But the Japanese are improving so much. I remember watching that match the Japanese played against Australia. And that match was actually closer than the scoreline reflected. I mean, the Japanese scored something like 3 or 4 tries against the Wallabies, which is quite big for them. But ended up letting in 7 or 8 quite easily. So I'm excited to see how that Japanese All Blacks stats goes this year. Obviously, I think New Zealand might put 100 on them. But, I hope Japanese rugby, I hope they start to peak towards the World Cup. Don't beat Scotland, maybe beat Ireland in the pool stages, and Scotland and Japan go through to get destroyed by South Africa and New Zealand in the quarterfinals anyway. But, I hope Japan can be at least one of the top tier nations in the Rugby World Cup. Hopefully it's not Scotland. I'm very nervous for that match, the last match just before the quarterfinals. But, let Japan rugby improve, but not too much.
Jeez, this is not quite good enough to beat Scotland. We're going to put them in the final placing for the Australian Conference.
Yeah, I'll put them last. I'm putting them last because the Australian teams have got to have a resurgence, right? But I hope the Sunwolves will definitely beat a couple of the Super Rugby sides, the Aussie Super Rugby sides this year. Will they beat the Waratahs? Hopefully not. Will they beat the Reds? I reckon they might. Can they pull an upset against the Brumbies? Probably not. Can they beat the Rebels? Potentially. But obviously you've still got the matches against New Zealand and South Africa to contend with. So at least they won't be doing as much travelling is what I'm saying.
So I've got them in 4th. I've got them to come up above the Reds for mine. So go the Sunwolves. That's all I can say. They might see me assured, at least if I won, unlike the Kings. Anyway, on to the Waratahs. And for the first time we can say, no new coach, but it's possibly this guy is the one most people thought was going to go at the end of 2017.
This is his 3rd year. He wasn't a new coach at the start of 2017. He came in at the start of 2016.
Yeah, but he was the one that most people thought would be gone at the end of 2017.
Oh, yeah. I came out and said get rid of him multiple times last year. No idea how he survived the review from the New South Wales Rugby Union, but if the big thing lacking for the Waratahs last year and all Australian Super Rugby sides was their fitness. They played for 60 minutes and then the last 20 they lose. So if they have the right preseason this year, if they start to really get fitter, put another 10, 15% fitness on everyone, they'll be much more competitive this year. But I tell you, there's a lot of player drain from New South Wales as well. You've got a lot of big players out. You've got a few interesting players come in. So I'm interested to see what you sort of think about this side. But I'm still excited, but at the same time, I'm very concerned because I know Darryl Gibson is still there.
Do you think he's still the wrong man for the job?
No, not at all. I reckon there's a few shoot shield coaches that should be given the reins to the New South Wales Waratahs, but what am I? I'm just a passionate supporter.
One thing I think we'll both agree on though is the departure of Dean Mumm and Will Skelton. Finally, they're gone, and they've brought in Will Simmons from the Reds, which I think is a pretty good. I'd take that if I was picking. Are we going to see a better performance from their pack though this year, or are we going to see more headless chickens from them?
Oh, you would hope so. I mean, a lot of their pack last year was a lot of new faces coming through. I mean, you had the likes of Jack Dempsey, Ned Hannigan, you had the likes of Brad Wilkin, Michael Wells, Jed Holloway, all new players in 2016/17. I know you still think of them as no names. I mean, they've got some good depth. I mean, that if they really want to go with their best back row is Jack Dempsey, Ned Hannigan, and Michael Hooper. Michael Hooper, obviously the captain. Ned Hannigan, a Wallaby. Jack Dempsey, a Wallaby. Both can play very well at that time. Jack Dempsey, I think, is injured though. He got injured for the Wallabies. Wouldn't that Bledisloe test, I think? So I'm not sure if he'll be ready for the start of the season. They got huge firepower in that lock position. They brought in Nick Palmer from Hawke's Bay in New Zealand. They brought in Rob Simmons. They brought in Tom Staniforth. They brought in Lachlan Swindon, who's also a very good player. They've also got the likes of Ryan McCauley there, who's a good up-and-coming player who I know quite well. And they've still got a very good front row. They got Tuolatu and Hugh Roach in the front row. Paddy Ryan, Sakopi Kepu, Tom Robinson, all Wallabies. So they've got Wallabies all across the park, but it's just can they get the best out of them? I'm not sure.
So you talk about their pack, which is quite good, because we'll move into their back line. They've picked up Curtly Beale, which I think is a pretty big pickup. It's a massive play. So personally, I think that if they go with the idea of playing two playmakers, 10 and 12, that's why I think Foley, Beale at 12, it should unleash what would be a pretty devastating back three, at least, if not whole back line in this Waratahs side. But do you think the combination is going to be played that way? Do you think Gibson's going to go with the Foley and Beale sort of combination, or is he going to do something completely different and just screw it all up?
Well, I'm interested to see really the 9 battle, because Jade Gordon was the starting 9 last year for the Waratahs, and he was great. I thought he was better than Phipps last year, but Michael Checker still chose Phipps for the Wallabies over Jade Gordon. So I'm really interested to see how that combination will go. Obviously, Nick Phipps and Bernard Foley know each other like yin and yang. Not yin and yang. They know each other like the back of their hand. Yin and yang's complete opposites. They're completely similar, pretty much. Bryce Hegarty is still garbage. No idea why he has a Super Rugby contract. Mac Mason's also a very good 10. I really like the way he plays. So they've got very good backup in that 10 position. I'm not really sure. We are having the discussion about this just before we came on camera. What's that backline going to be? Are you going to put Israel Folau at 13 and then have Andrew Callaway, Curtis Rona, and Nauru Roro in the back in the backline, or Cam Clark in the back three? Or do you put Israel Folau at the back, maybe put Curtis Rona at 13 or Callaway at 13, and then have Clark and Rona on the wings? They've got complete depth in that backline. It's just can Bernard Foley stay fit? First of all, he wasn't fit most of last season with concussion, and second of all, start really the forwards going forward to allow them to play with that freedom. The forward. I mean, they lose Rob Horn, which is huge. I was a huge fan of Rob Horn. David Horwitz, I was also a huge fan of him. I'm glad Reece Robinson has gone back to rugby league, because my God, he was garbage.
Not picking out any names. I agree with you there. It's got to be what they do with Folau. That's got to be the big question. I think, from what I've seen of him, I think he is more impactful at fullback, because the way he can pick where he comes in, he can see where he wants to attack and just inject himself in the right areas. When he's in the back line, it's like he gets the ball and thinks, well, I got no other choice. I've just got to go through here. So he's a lot more dangerous when he can find the gaps and come in wherever he likes. But that does, like you say, leaves a question of where they're going to, or who they're going to put in that number 13 jumper outside what I'd put Beale at 12. So Callaway's a very good player. Clark's pretty good as well. So they've got plenty of options here, but just who are they going to make into that outside centre is going to be the biggest question for mine. Yeah, I'd definitely put Folau at fullback, though. I think he's a lot more dangerous. And put your best defensive player at 13. That's my simple solution for that. Just make the tackles and pass the ball to the wingers.
Maybe put Curtis Rona there, and then have Folau's always good under the high ball, so I don't know why you wouldn't want to take him away from fullback. I'm also interested to see, because Israel Folau obviously went on a sabbatical at the end of last season. He didn't go on the November International. So has he kept up his form, and does he still love the game or not? Has the sabbatical done well for him, or has it done bad? I'm also interested to see David Pocock come down here, because I know he's been playing in Japan and did his knee. I'm interested to see how he comes back after his sabbatical for a year. So I'm hoping that these big-name players that are a big part of the Wallabies 2015 World Cup campaign start to find form again before 2019, because I think Australia's a much better chance in Scotland at the 2019 Rugby.
And they need them too. They need them. If they don't have a fully committed, you could say, Folau or Pocock, the two you mentioned there, then that's huge. That's huge attacking influence and just power in the forward pack as well. So that's going to be big for them. On to their strengths and weaknesses of the Waratahs. Your team, you can go for it.
Yeah, so obviously strengths are completely in the backline. Backline depth all over the place. Got the big name players of Phipps, Folau, Bernard Foley, Curtly Beale. That backline is Wallaby. It is to die for. I am glad we got that backline. The weaknesses have pretty much been with the scrum recently, and have been with the fitness levels of the Waratahs. I mean, last year the Waratahs had so many big bodies that after 60 minutes they would get tired. Darryl Gibson wouldn't bring on the fresh legs in time, and they would get destroyed in the final 20 minutes. They need to stay in it the entire time, the Waratahs. I think they've got a very good chance this year. On paper, I think they're the best team in the Australian Conference. I really want to see how they go. For me, it really comes down to what is Darryl Gibson going to do that is different over the last 2 years that makes the Waratahs back to the 2014 and 2015 form, and not the 2016-2017 form, because no one wants to watch the Waratahs of 2017. And I can tell you that I didn't want to watch the Waratahs at the end of last year because of the way they played. Pathetic. Yeah, losing to the Kings. I had to do, again, I still say it, the hot chili shot of sauce, because the Waratahs lost at home to the Southern Kings. Yes, I repeat that. They lost at home to the Southern Kings, who haven't won a game in the Pro 14 all year so far.
Hey, that's a completely different squad. That's a completely different squad. That last season Super Rugby side was a damn good team. You can't deny it. Anyway,
I do remember you at this time last year saying the Southern Kings were absolutely awful, though. You hated the Kings at the start of the Super Rugby season last year, and then they were your number one team. I loved how you completely did a switch on that.
The thing is with the Kings last season was that it was a completely whole wiped out new squad. It's not that I hated or thought they were rubbish. It's just the fact that I couldn't comprehend a team that had no resemblance of any players playing together any other time, coming together about a week before the tournament started and actually being able to play at that top level. I didn't dislike the side. It's just that just does not compute that you have nobodies. It's like you walk down the street and go, yep, you come out of your house, you come out of your house, you come out, let's play a game of rugby.
What the hell's going to happen? In the pub.
Yeah, exactly. There was no obvious sense that team was going to be able to perform, but bloody hell, they're spectacular. And it's like, geez, you won me as a fan. That was a great season by the Kings, but we're not talking about them anymore. Unfortunately, they're gone. I'd agree with you on strengths and weaknesses. I think their halves, especially their playmaking option, is going to be their big strength. If they can get the best out of 1912, they could be a very, very dangerous side.
Gibson may even play Beale at fullback. That's how crazy he is.
That's true too. Yeah.
He might put someone in at 12, like I don't know, maybe Alex Newsom or Fecky, or maybe you put Mac Mason at 12, or maybe you can put the garbage Bryce Hegarty at 12, and then Beale at 15 and Folau at 13. I'm going to go off that Adams, but he will do that. He definitely will do that.
That would be disastrous. That would be like if Folau got injured, then okay. And Callaway was injured, I'll probably put those two definitely before Beale going back there. But Beale is just, defensively, he's not up to scratch at fullback, I don't think. So that it wouldn't surprise me either. The things he did last season, that would not be a surprise whatsoever. And that is my weakness as well. We're going to find out whether it's the players or it's the coach this season. If we see more rubbish from the players, and from the coach, what it's going to be. Who's really going to be screwing this up? Or are we going to see something different from the Waratahs this year? Hopefully we don't see any of this aimless rubbish we've seen last year. I couldn't stand watching them either. Just running around pointlessly. No idea. No plan, no objectives. Just pass it to the next guy and hope that he's got a better idea. That's just not at that level that you're going to ever perform at. So I just hope not to see that from the Waratahs in 2018, and hopefully it goes a bit better. So where you got them finishing?
I got them number 1, but that's my team, so it's quite biased.
Number 1.
Yeah, I expect the Brumbies to do. I hope that overall the Aussie teams go over 50% this year. I hope we win maybe 30-40% of matches against the Kiwi opposition this year. Hopefully it's not 0. That's the entire point of what Rugby Australia did. If we go 0-20 again against New Zealand opposition, expect the death of Australian rugby.
Ooh, big calls. I've got them coming 3rd.
Yeah. Well, who did you have top again? The Rebels, didn't you? Yeah.
Rebels, Brumbies, Waratahs.
I just hope the Rebels can beat Kiwi opposition. They've always had trouble beating Kiwi opposition, the Rebels. So they just need to beat Kiwi opposition to do anything. And I guess that's for any Australian team, and even South African team. But, when you have 8 teams making the finals out of 15 instead of 6 now, you've got maybe a bit more room to falter now as well.
Yeah, and you've got pretty strong New Zealand sides too as well. I don't know if you've looked at them too much, but it's going to be a really interesting season as well for those New Zealand and Australia derby matches. So anything else you want to add about the Waratahs?
No, not really. I just hope they play a better brand of rugby. I actually want to go to a few matches this year. I think I only went to one maybe this last year, and that was the Force game at the start of the season. They ended up winning that match, but the way they played, I didn't want to go back. So I hope they play better. I hope, hopefully, all of Australian rugby picks up. I remember saying at the start of last year that this is going to be a recovery year for Australian rugby. I'm not going to make that same mistake now. I'm going to take a conservative approach. I'm going to say I hope. I'm now a Scottish rugby fan. I hope the team can win. I know they will win. I know the New Zealand sides can say, I know the All Blacks are going to win. I'm now a hopeful supporter instead of a confident supporter. So, I know that makes no sense to anyone apart from myself. But, yeah. I just hope Australian Super Rugby is much more competitive. I hope the format also brings the fans back as well. I'm a more bigger fan of this format. I like the local derbies more. I like seeing the Waratahs play the Reds a couple of times in the season. The same for the Brumbies. I can't wait to see the Sunwolves more in action as well. I'm a big supporter of them, so I'm excited for this year.
Should be very, very good as well. So that does wrap us up for the 5 teams in the Australian Conference for the 2018 Super Rugby competition. We're not far away from kickoff either. I think we're only a couple of weeks, if that, even away from starting. Probably only a week.
Still got the rubbish Brisbane Global 10s to go through.
Yeah, 2 weeks or so. By the time I upload this, from when we record it, it'll probably be a couple of weeks away. Sounds about good. Right on the money.
I think Africa's a week before us, though, isn't it? I don't know why that is.
There's 2 games for round 1, which is the Stormers and the Jaguares, and the Lions and the Sharks play round 1 on the 18th of February before the rest of us kick off on the 23rd.
Why?
Probably to do with June Internationals again, I'd say.
June Internationals?
Yep, because that's what always happens. You'll find that New Zealand teams have an extra round where it's just New Zealand and Australian teams midway through the competition.
That was because of the Lions tour last year, though, wasn't it?
That was because of the Lions, but it always seems to... Yeah, there you go. Week 16, Australia and New Zealand only. It's 5 games. So that's why...
Well, that's dumb. Everyone's got the same June window, the last ever June window before that global calendar goes in. So it makes no sense to me. Anyway.
No, I know what you mean, but that's just the way it goes. It's Sanzar at its very best.
Sanzar's in Sydney, so I can go and find them for you.
Yeah, go take them out. Go tell them a word or two. Anyway, that wraps us up. We've been going on too long already. Thank you for joining me. Where can people find you? What will they find? And anything else you want to dribble on about?
Oh, not really. I mean, I'm just doing random content at the moment. Still keeping up with Rugby 18. Not sure how long that will last before, hopefully, maybe a Rugby Challenge 4 comes out. I'm not sure. 2018, it's been a couple of years, so potentially. What do you think, Cornflake? Yes or no?
I would not have a clue. Hopefully, that's all I can say. I know absolutely. No one tells me anything.
No,
I'm
I don't know anything.
Way down in the bottom of the world.
I'm just going based upon common sort of thoughts. It's been 2 years since the Rugby Challenge, and just on the True Blue cycles. Anyway.
Hopefully, that's all I can say. Hopefully it would, because it would be a damn sight better than anything else we've been getting recently. But that is it. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you all next time. We're back again with Brett, hopefully, for the South African Conference. Have a little chat about those 5 teams in Super Rugby this year. So until then, thanks for watching, and as always, take care.